work out, then
Oh, yeah.
we'll take little breaks and I can talk in Spanish. Okay. Oh no, it's gonna work out. Bueno.
I mean, the meet, okay, the meet is,
Okay. So looks like we are live. We are recording. Good morning, good evening, good night, wherever you may be. Thank you for joining us. I know Roshi's having the time of her life right now in India. I just saw some pictures of her in her robes looking beautiful. So I know we can maybe take a little bit of that joy and bring it into our practice today. Um, we'll start off by just doing a few minutes, 10 minutes, I think, of some breathing meditation, anapanasati. And we're going to be focusing on, I'm going to guide you through it. We're going to be focusing on the first two bases or foundations of the practice of mindfulness, focusing on observing the body, kaya nupassana, and observing the feeling tone, the Vedana Nupassana. So just go ahead and, just get ready, get comfortable, um, do whatever you do to prepare yourself for meditation. So it's very important that we're comfortable. Meditation can already at times be a bit uncomfortable, especially if we're sitting on the ground with our legs crossed. So we just want to make sure that we find a comfortable, stable, and upright posture. So to the extent that you can, try to have a straight back. All of our bodies are a little bit different, but do the best that you can to have a straight back. And you can either close your eyes or leave them open. And if you leave them open, just kind of gently gaze over your knees like you're doing Zazen Shikantaza. If not, I invite you to close your eyes and slowly begin to withdraw your attention from the external environment, gathering your attention and redirecting your focus inward. And as we withdraw our attention from everything going on around us, we can begin to um, rest our attention on the breath. We begin to focus on the in and out breathing, mindful of breathing in and mindful of breathing out. So you don't have to control the breath in any way, just breathe naturally. Aware and mindful of the in breath and the out breath. And if your mind wanders at any time, no worries. Just gently bring your attention back to the breath. If your mind wanders 100 times, that's okay. Just bring your attention back to the breath 100 times. This is the practice. And as we increase our awareness, our mindfulness, our attention of the breath, we can begin to notice differences in the breath. We might notice that the breath is long or that the breath is short. So we become aware of a long breath, we become aware of a short breath. And just breathe naturally. Don't make the breath be any way. If there's any changes in the breath, we just become aware of them. If the mind wanders, we just gently bring it back over and over and over again. Breathing in, breathing out, noticing any differences in the breath, whether long or short. And mindfulness of the breath is really mindfulness of the body. Kaya Nupassana. So we're focusing on feeling the breath because the breath is part of the body. And to observe the breath is to observe the tactile sensations or bodily sensations. So feel the in-breath and feel the out-breath. If you are using any noting or any counting, I invite you to put that aside for the rest of the meditation and just feel the in-breath and feel the out-breath. Mindful of the breathing in and mindful of the breathing out. We just want to be with the raw experience of breathing in and the raw experience of breathing out. There's no need to tell any stories about the breath. No need for any concepts. Just feeling. Just the body. And as our awareness of the body, our mindfulness of the body deepens, we can try to encompass the entire breath when we breathe in and breathe out. So we want to be mindful from the moment that the air touches the tip of our nose and goes down our nostrils and into our chest, and there's movements in the abdomen and torso. And then the air comes back out. Once again, we see the abdomen and torso move, and the breath comes out of our nose. We want to feel the entire breath breathing in and feel the entire breath breathing out. We want to feel this body breathing in and feel the body breathing out without focusing on any particular part. Just breathe naturally. Don't try to control the breath. If your mind wanders, just gently bring it back. Feeling the in-breath, feeling the out-breath. Mindful of the entire breath. From the tip of your nose all the way down to your abdomen. Following the breath as it flows in and out of your body. And this is a good time to check in our posture, making sure we have an upright posture. Back is straight. And now we will focus on stilling of the body, tranquilizing the bodily formations, which just means to relax the body and not to give in to any bodily urges. So for the rest of our meditation, we will try to be as still as possible, not to scratch or move or wiggle our toes or make any adjustments unless they are necessary because you're feeling overwhelmed. But to the extent that you can, I would invite you now to work on developing stillness of the body by not moving at all. And as we try to develop this stillness, we will notice pleasant and unpleasant feelings in the body, mostly the unpleasant ones. This is the dukkha vedana, unpleasant feeling. And instead of just giving in to these impulses, instead of reacting to these unpleasant feelings that arise in the body, we want to just observe them like the breath. The breath comes and goes, and the unpleasant feeling and pleasant feelings in the body also come and go. But we need to give ourselves a chance, an opportunity to see this happen instead of just giving in to an itch or our feet falling asleep. So as we breathe in, as we breathe out, mindful of the breath, we also become mindful of pleasant and unpleasant feelings. And if an unpleasant feeling arises, we watch it. We learn to be with discomfort. So for the last minute, we will practice in silence. So as we prepare to come out of our meditation, we can refocus back on our other senses and bring some of our attention back to the external environment, external sounds and sights, smells. If our eyes are closed, we can gently open our eyes. And as we finish this meditation, I invite you to make any necessary adjustments, maybe stretch out or stand up or do whatever you need to do to take care of yourself before we go into the Dhamma talk. Yes, yes. I'm not used to doing short meditations like that. I have to catch myself. I can go on talking and guiding for an hour easily. That time, 10 minutes was fast. Okay, so I hope you had your morning coffee at Dunkin' or Starbucks, or you had your chai, whatever it is. So your mind is alert. Yes, yes, please take a sip of whatever you have nearby. It's important. That's the what unique, according to the myth, the unique contribution of Bodhidharma, right? The tea leaves, the caffeine. He's like the Buddhist patron saint of caffeine. Okay, everyone. So today I wanted to talk a little bit about dukkha. Yeah, yeah. Dukkha, usually translated very dramatically as suffering, right? That's also included in dukkha, right? Dukkha is pain, suffering, discomfort is dukkha, not getting what you want is dukkha, getting what you don't want is dukkha, losing what you love is dukkha. All these kind of uncomfortable feelings, whether physical or mental, even spiritual, is all encompassed by dukkha. Just means something doesn't feel right. Something's not right. That's dukkha. And so then what is the source of our dukkha? And it's quite tempting to say, oh, I know what my source of my dukkha is, right? It's like the guy in the cubicle next to me, this guy over here, or the person on the news, that's the source of my dukkha, or my neighbor, hopefully not your partner or your mom or dad, right? You're not thinking that way. But when we think about dukkha, we tend to look outwards, right? And dukkha can be conditioned by external uh, uh, things going on in the environment. But dukkha is very much a subjective experience. Two people can be experiencing the same external stimulus and have a completely different feeling about it. For one person, it can be rather painful. The other person can be rather pleasant. So that lets us know that, the core of the dukkha is within us. And according to, the formulation of the Buddha and the Four Noble Truths, which was the primary teaching of the Buddha and all the Buddhas throughout space and time, it's not only the teaching of our Buddha, Sammasambuddha Gautama, but of all the past Buddhas and the future Buddha Maitreya will all teach dukkha, Four Noble Truths. Now, if it was all just dukkha, why even practice, right? What's the point of it? Just have fun, do whatever you can to kind of appease that suffering, sedate yourself. But the Buddha told us that dukkha is to be understood. So within this Four Noble Truths kind of formulation that the Buddha shared with us in the Turning of the Wheel of Dhamma, which was his first discourse called the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta. Here he says that dukkha has three parts. Right? We have to first know there is dukkha. Dukkha is to be understood, and dukkha has been completely understood. So when we first hear about the teachings of Buddhism, we're beginning to see that there is dukkha, coming to terms and facing dukkha. On the path, while we walk the Noble Eightfold Path, we're working on understanding dukkha. And whenever it is that we do become fully awakened, enlightened, then we have completely understood dukkha, right? So these are the three phases to dukkha. So the Four Noble Truths is just not something to believe. Right? It's not like, oh yes, dukkha, all right, I got it, right? Note taken. Or I just take the Buddha's word on dukkha, there's suffering, I believe what the Buddha said. But it's really an invitation to explore dukkha. Like today in your meditation, you should have taken the time to be with that discomfort that arose in the body, to be with that unease that arises when your mind is not doing what you want it to do and it starts thinking about all these other things. You made time today on Sunday in the morning to meditate, but for many of you, maybe your mind didn't want to do that, right? So then there's a little bit of upset, right? Your mind gets a little upset. There's a little dukkha, mental dukkha. Or maybe some back pain when it's cold. My joints also act up, even though I look rather young. I wasn't so nice to my body in my 20s. Now I'm paying the price for it. But right there too, right? Instead of wiggling out of my dukkha, I'm invited to see it. My whole life, I've been trying to avoid pain, right? Move away from it. As soon as some discomfort arises, I don't like it, get rid of it. But the Buddha invites us to be with. Be with the pleasant and the unpleasant and the boring neutral. By doing this, we begin to understand the causes and conditions, the origin, samudaya, which is the second noble truth, which is not your neighbor. Once again, it is tanha. Tanha usually translated as desire, cravings a little bit closer. if we look at the etymology of tanha is trishna in Sanskrit. Trishna means thirst, right? So I don't think anyone wakes up and just desires to be thirsty today or extra thirsty today. No, it's not a cognitive thing that we do, thirst, right? Thirst just happens. You feel thirst. It's an impulse. So tanha is not a desire in the sense of like, I would like this, I would like that. Tanha just arises in the moment. You know, you're walking down the street, you see a very beautiful person, automatically, wow, this person's beautiful, attractive, right? Maybe you're driving down the street and you see a Dunkin' Donuts, right? You don't have to make a desire, you just feel it. Oh, wow, right? I would like a donut or some coffee. So tanha is like this. The source of our suffering is this kind of impulse that comes. It's felt in the body and it has this kind of affective tone to it. It's a feeling. It's not a wish. It's not a desire in that sense, something that you're looking for. So this is really the source of our suffering. And the Buddha divides this craving into, or this thirst into three parts. First one called kama tanha. Kama is sensual, right? So this sensual impulse towards the things that are pleasant, the tasty things, right? Always wanting that, always. From the moment that we wake up until we go to bed, just chasing pleasant experiences all the time. A pleasant seat, right? A pleasant, peaceful room to be quiet in, a pleasant drink, a pleasant meal, a pleasant person to listen to and look at. Even when we go to bed, even unconsciously in our in our beds, in our comfortable, expensive beds that cost hundreds of dollars, maybe even thousands for some of you, even there, we toss and turn at night, looking for comfort, looking for pleasure, sensual pleasure, all the time. From the moment that we wake up, we're thinking already, I would like something pleasant, something tasty. We all need to eat. We all need to have something to drink to survive. But that's not what we do in the morning. We look for something tasty and we justify it by saying, oh, well, I need to eat to survive or I need to drink to survive. So this is how we live our lives. But is it possible for you at all times to have a pleasant experience, to satisfy your sensual pleasures? Is it possible? I think all of you have figured out, no, you can't, right? It hasn't worked out. It's not possible. And as you get older, your body begins to figure that out, right? Uh, just more pain in the body, more discomfort in the body. So if our goal in life, right, or if we live our lives from this perspective of chasing sensual pleasures, physical comfort all the time, then we're setting ourselves up for failure. It's impossible. We'll never be there. That means we'll be miserable. If you have a goal and you can't achieve it, you're gonna end up being upset. So we need to understand that we we need to let go of this. We need to let go of living a life that's just solely based on always trying to find comfort, alleviate our discomfort, our pain and suffering. Sometimes we just have to deal with it. We just have to deal with it. I've had knee pain for the last 10 years. It's not gonna go away. That's just gonna be the rest of my life. Just gotta accept it. Yeah. I think for those of you here that were in the military, you know about knee pain and back pain. Yeah. Just gotta deal with it. Mm. We're all gonna experienced the loss of a loved one. No one here will be free from that. There's nothing that you can do to get rid of that grief. My father passed away 15 years ago. It's still painful. That's just who I am as a person now. That's always going to be there. And that's okay. That's fine. But the temptation is to no, right? I shouldn't feel any bad feelings. I should be over my grief. Like, I shouldn't feel that pain. Get rid of it. I should do something about this knee surgery. I should be taking drugs or just, I don't want to deal with it at all. Like, I always have to be pleasant. That's not possible. So this is one of the conditions, causes for our suffering. Always chasing pleasure. The next one is the kind of opposite, which is always wanting to get away from the pain, which is called vibhava tanha. I don't want to be vibhava, not being tanha. I don't want to be this way. I don't want to be in this miserable state, in this painful state, in this woeful state, in this state of anxiety and discomfort. I would prefer not to, actually, vibhava tanha. I would prefer not to, which to it, in the extreme, might lead people to wish they were never born, wish for this life to be over. And for those of you that do, traditional Buddhist believe in rebirth, wish not even to be born again. I don't want to go through this again because of the pain and suffering that people are experiencing in this life. But if you're a Buddhist, you understand that whether you like it or not, rebirth will happen. You don't have a choice in it, right? Um, if you were to, you know, get rid of this body in this very life, you would just be reborn again and have to go through it all over again. So there's no escape by trying to get rid of this life. And wishing that you were never born, well, that already happened too. There's nothing you can do about that. We can't go back in time. So this urge that we have to escape our situation or future situations like this, I mean, it's not based in reality. There's nothing we can really do about it. We also need to come to terms with this and not live a life that's just based on trying to escape escapism. And the last one is called bhavatanha, the impulse or this urge to continue existing, which is very much built into us, right? We don't really have to do anything. Anytime we perceive some danger to this body, we automatically, move away, jump away. Or if we automatically perceive any, psychological or social attacks, we defend ourselves right away. We don't really have to think about it when someone insults us. We are already ready to defend ourselves. We don't have to think about it when a dog comes chasing us, or we just automatically move away. But we can't always move away, or that might not be the best response to give into this impulse when we feel either psychologically, socially, or physically threatened. Sometimes we may not be able to do anything about it, and we just have to accept our demise. We have to accept that our the view that we have of ourselves, right? This kind of socially constructed self is getting attacked and it's getting destroyed and will be destroyed. And we might end up questioning who we are, not knowing who we are, or that this body itself, will be destroyed. It doesn't do us any good to be full of terror in the last moments of our lives, wishing things would be otherwise. This is one powerful thing that I've learned as a Buddhist monk visiting people in the hospital at their homes and hospice care when they're about to pass away. Those of them who have accepted their destiny, their fate, tend to be having a better time. in those last moments than those who resist it. Right? The quality of our life, I think, is a lot more important than the quantity. But we have this sense of always wanting to live forever and having our reputation or our psychological selves to be a certain way and not be threatened and destroyed and taken down. So this is one way of thinking about bhava tanha, this impulse to exist physically, psychologically. But it's also something that cannot always be and will not always be. So these are the three sources of our suffering. And how are they conditioned, right? What brings forth this craving? What brings forth this impulse to only want sensual pleasures and to always move away from uncomfortable situations and to always want to continue existing? So here the Buddha says that our craving, tanha, is conditioned by Vedana, Vedana Pachaya tanha, in Paticca Samuppada, dependent origination. That's why I brought in this element of observing the pleasant and unpleasant feelings in our meditation. Because these cravings for sensual pleasures, these cravings for getting away from unpleasant situations, and this craving for continued existence are conditioned by pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral feelings. Pleasant and unpleasant and neutral feelings are really built into the body, into this organism, into this being. There's really nothing much we can do about it. Even the Buddha himself and the Arahants experienced pleasant and unpleasant feelings. If you read the suttas, you'll see that the Buddha had stomach aches, he had back pain, all sorts of things, just like the other awakened beings. But what they didn't have was this craving. They were free from craving. They were free from this thirst. They were free from tanha. So there's a way that we can experience great pleasure. There's a way that we can experience horrible pain. And there's ways that we can experience like this very deep dullness of life without having to push or pull, run away and chase. So if we learn to observe and be with a pleasant feeling when it arises, sukha vedana, we can say, here's the pleasant feeling. Oh, I need to be careful now because this pleasant feeling can lead me towards craving this thing. And if I go into craving, craving will take me towards clinging, right? I feel it, I want it, I have to have it all the time, holding on to it. And this clinging will lead to being or existing, bhava. And then this will lead to birth, which means completely identifying with it. I got to have it. This is who I am, taking it as part of your personality, existing from that place. And then from birth comes death and pain, sorrow, lamentation. This is the end of the Paticca Samuppada. Sokha parideva dukkha domanassa upayassa. So this whole sequence of events is triggered by our inability to see and be with these pleasant and unpleasant sensations in our mind and body, and how they're blindly driving us in this sequence of suffering and pain. So the true purpose of mindfulness is to be able to pick up on this. And not only to be mindful, but to understand this process. That's why sati always comes together with sampajana or pajanati to understand. Sati sampajana, you'll see. If you read the Satipatthana Sutta, how the Buddha talks about practicing mindfulness. Mindfulness doesn't happen in a vacuum. Sati doesn't happen on its own. It has to be combined with understanding, clear comprehension, sati sampajani. So we see pleasant, unpleasant feelings arise. We're mindful, and then we understand, oh, this is a pleasant feeling. This is an unpleasant feeling, right? Is giving in to this pleasant feeling for my benefit, for the benefit of others, for the benefit of all? Or does this lead to pain for myself, pain for others, and pain for all? Here's where our discernment comes in. This discernment is the second of the seven factors of awakening, the Satabojjhanga. As I said, mindfulness doesn't happen on its own. When we develop sati, mindfulness, we also develop discernment of the phenomena that are being experienced, called Dhamma Vichaya. Dhamma's phenomena, and Vichaya means investigate or to examine. So we examine this state, this feeling. How did this feeling arise? Well, my annoying coworker showed up. I felt an unpleasant feeling, right? And now I want to lash out. I want to give into this impulse. Oh no, that is not kusala. That is not wholesome. That is akusala, unwholesome. So this kind of examination of this kind of pleasant and unpleasant feelings, seeing how they arise, understanding it, leads us to discern whether the outcome will be, if we give into it, will be pleasant, will be wholesome or unwholesome. That's really at the core of the second factor of the seven factors of awakening, which is Dhamma Vichaya, is this ability to discern between the wholesome and the unwholesome, the kusala and akusala, or just good and bad, to know what's good or bad. So we need to be with dukkha. We need to see the dukkha, understand the dukkha, examine the dukkha, and then we will see the conditions for it, its origin, which is tanha, craving. So we also need to look at the craving. We need to be with the craving. We need to examine and understand the craving. And we'll see what conditions and causes the craving, which is the feeling, how we feel about something, whether it's pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. And we also do the same here, right? We look at it, we examine it, we understand it, and we make an effort not to be driven and controlled by it. And there's nothing wrong with pleasant feelings. Pleasant feelings are fine. But when our default pattern becomes to chase pleasant feelings, then it becomes unskillful. It becomes detrimental, right? Moving away from discomfort is fine. But when that becomes our default, unquestioned, unexamined, all the time, just flee, then it becomes unskillful, painful. Okay, so I would like to leave some time for questions and answers. I know today's session is shorter, it's only 1 hour, and we're getting close. And I love the Q&A. That's my favorite part. I don't see myself much as a preacher. I see myself more as like I like to have conversations. So now it's time for the conversations to happen. So please, someone ask a question, and as soon as someone asks a question, everyone else will feel motivated to do it, right? So it just takes one person to get this started. Be the catalyst for the Dhamma talk. Yes, stick.
Yeah, hi,
Yes.
Bhante. I'm just curious about some of your own uh, most powerful experiences in this
Mm,
process of waking up. If you could share some of that as part of your journey, that would be wonderful.
mm. Okay. So I like to tie it in with today's uh, talk, and so it was in 2013. I had just come back from my third deployment in Afghanistan, and I took my R&R, rest and recovery time, um, at a Zen center called Yokoji Zen Center in Southern California. And since it was within a certain radius of the base, I was allowed to take my R&R, because usually R&R is like on base within a certain distance. It's not like leave. But since it was within the distance of the March Air Force Base, I was able to go there. And it was my first intensive, 7-day retreat. I had never done even a weekend retreat. And I remember going in there with this tough guy attitude, right? At that time, I was in the top 1% of physical fitness in the Air Force. So I felt, pretty confident. A year and a half earlier, I had just ran a marathon, a satellite marathon for the Boston Marathon in Afghanistan also. So I was feeling quite, sure of myself. And I was like, oh, this is just another mountain to conquer, right? Something else I'll put on my list of achievements. Um, yeah, but within the very first day, it was so painful. So painful. I have never been the most flexible person in my life, I wasn't very agile, very stiff, and just, forcing myself to sit with my legs crossed on the cushion was very difficult. Even though they offered chairs, I was like, no, I'm not gonna do the chair, you know? And I did this, and, the second day when I went to bed, my legs were throbbing at night. I just felt my legs throbbing and pulsing all night. It was just so painful. There was no relief at any point. Something interesting happened on the third day. There was a ceiling fan that had a subtle like creak to it. It wasn't, something was wrong with it. And there's nothing much to do, right? When you're sitting in zazen, like it's quite boring. And if you're in pain, you're just looking for any excuse to get away from the pain. So my mind went towards that little noise, right? In the ceiling fan, that like the little noise. And I was so upset by it, right? I was like, oh, I'm already in physical pain, and now I have to deal with this annoying sound too. This is getting worse. Uh, but I noticed that when I was focusing on the annoying sound, although it was annoying, I wasn't feeling my pain. I wasn't feeling the pain on my legs and knees. Like I got some ease, some relief from the physical pain when my mind was upset at the fan. So then I said, oh, why don't I just focus on the fan then instead of the body? So when I did that, I noticed that the intensity of the pain would come and go. It wasn't always constant, and it was a lot easier to sit. So then I just started focusing on that. And then I said, oh, wow. So I could just redirect my attention to anything, and I can exclude things, include things. I can find calm even when I'm in a kind of situation where I don't really have anywhere to go. I can find a way to be with it in a wholesome way. So then after that, the fan kind of became like my friend. I started to like the sound of it because it was bringing me relief. So I was able to overcome both the physical pain and the kind of subjective kind of, I don't like that noise, right? The distress that it was causing me. So I was able to, it's not very Buddhist saying, but, to kill two birds with one stone there, right? I was able to overcome my mental affliction from that annoying fan noise and the physical pain, my affliction from my physical pain by just being with that sound, mindfulness of hearing, mindfulness of sound, just being with the sound of the fan. I was able to be with all of that was there. And but you know what? Every night for the rest of the retreat, my legs are still pulsing at night and throbbing. That's the reality of it. They just weren't used to it, and you know, but I was able to be with all of that, and I learned a lot from that experience, and I was able to carry that over into my everyday life. That there's a way to be with unpleasant and discomfort and pain and suffering in a way that doesn't shake up your mind, in a way that's not impulsive, in a way that's not just obsessed with the remedy, looking for a cure. Sometimes there's nothing you can do about it, and we also have to learn how uh, to be with that. And it humbled me too, right? It was a good humbling experience of being this tough guy from going from a place from a mountain to conquer to a place of surrendering, right? I had to do the opposite. I had to let go. I had to get over myself. That was the mountain to conquer, right? To conquer myself, to let go of it. And yeah, I feel like that was uh like probably one of the catalysts for me to ordain to become a monk, to have that experience. It's one thing to hear all these beautiful teachings of the Buddha. It sounds quite elegant and poetic and deep, but yeah, I mean, there's only so much you can get from reading and words and listening. Once you see it for yourself, you taste it for yourself. You're like, oh, wow, there's something actually here. It's not just something I'm telling myself. And there's really the power of the Dhamma is to be experienced. The Buddha says to be experienced by the wise, right? So I feel like, especially in the West, we have a tend to over intellectualize the Dhamma, right? We think that it's like I don't know, like a course you take at university, and it's something to study and memorize. I mean, that's a tool that we can use, but that's not the Dhamma itself, right? The Dhamma itself is experience right now. What's happening with your mind when you're watching and listening? This is Dhamma practice time, right? This Dhamma is not apart from our Buddhism is not something separate from our everyday life. The practice is in everything that we do. The Buddha said, while defecating or urinating, one should have sati, mindful. So, if you have a chance, I would encourage you to practice mindfulness of defecating and urinating today, wiping properly, washing your hands properly, and all those things. It's very important. Uh, if not only for Dhamma practice, but for proper hygiene, that would also be well. So, yes. Any other questions?
I just thank you, Bhante. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Kylie?
Oh. Yeah, you said that really well. Thank you. Um, so I have a question for you, and thank you for that talk. I really enjoyed listening to that. Um, and then when you were describing your experience, your first experience on the cushion and that pain, and then using that fan to distract yourself. So it relates back to something that I'm going through right now, actually, even as we sit here and speak, and it's been going on for like a week or so, and it's been very confusing for me because this has happened before I was a practitioner. Now that I'm a practitioner and I deal with pain so much differently than I have in the past, it's really confusing me. And so I just want to tell you what it is, and I'm not asking for a solution, but maybe it'll make you think of something. So I got a toothache. And I've had a lot of toothaches, and I've had a lot of dental work over my whole life since I was a child. I've had a lot of root canals and a lot of pain. And I've always before I was practicing, I would get a toothache. I would run to the dentist, and then they would take care of it with a root canal. And it was instant gratification, and I could get away from that. And the science has changed, and now I have this toothache, and I went to the dentist and I said, oh my God, I have a toothache. I need a root canal. And they did all their tests, and they're like, we don't think that there's anything wrong with this tooth. It looks fine. So they send me home. So this was a couple weeks ago. And because I can direct my attention elsewhere, I'm like just sitting with it. And then this toothache comes back. And I know this sounds really weird, but I'm super confused now. I don't know what to do because I have a toothache, but it comes and it goes, and I'm able to put my attention elsewhere and to be with it until the pain subsides. And yet, there's this other part of me that's like, Kylie, you got to get to the dentist and get a root canal. If I go to the dentist, I've been to two specialists, and they're like, we don't see anything wrong with your tooth. It's very healthy. And I'm very confused. And at this point, my practice is confusing me because I'm like, do I sit with this? Do I listen to these people? Or anyway, I wanted to share that with you because that's what's going on for me. And it's very painful. Yeah. Anyway, I'll leave it at that. I'm going to leave it at that and see if maybe there's something.
Yes. This can be an opportunity to be with that, right? To be with that confusion, to be with doubt, to be with uncertainty. As a Buddhist monk, I've noticed that sometimes I feel trapped I feel like I have to have an answer. I have to know what I'm talking about, right? I need to know. That's my job. I'm in the job of knowing. It's okay not to know. I've learned that over the years. It's okay not to know, to be uncertain, to be confused, to be blindsided by a question and have no idea what the person's asking of me or the answer. That's fine. There's where the growth happens. Psychological growth, and also learning, an invitation to learn and explore more and investigate. So I think, from what you said, what came to mind to me is just to be okay with not knowing, to be okay with being in great doubt, right? In the Zen tradition, very big on great doubt and not knowing. So this can be an opportunity for that, and also an opportunity for investigation, right? To question this kind of this narrative of need to find a solution, need to find a solution, need to find a solution. Who to trust? Am I trustworthy? Are other people trustworthy? Who should I trust? Who should you trust? I don't know. Who should you trust? I have no idea. But it's a great, I think, a great invitation to do some research, yeah, on the self.
Yeah, that's right.
Is there any questions in español? Preguntas de nuestros compañeros? Because I think, Claudia, you're translating, right? I see your mouth moving, so.
I have a question follow-up to Kylie's,
Mhm.
and maybe you could comment on further, Bhante. The thought came to me, why not go to a third specialist? Three times the Buddha always is waiting for that third calling. And so go to a third specialist and maybe the answer will be there. Just a thought. Okay.
If I may interject along those lines, pain is, physical pain. Well, first of all, figuring out if it's a real pain or if it's one we've manufactured because we want to do something. But pain is an indication that there's something. And maybe even go to, a different kind of doctor, a general practitioner. Um, I, I fully sympathize with your angst on it because pain is an indication there's something amiss. And ignoring a pain without investigating the pain, but just sitting with the pain if you're not sure. I had a friend who sat with hip pain in meditation and just sat and sat. I mean, she had a remarkable ability to sit through pain. It turned out that she had a problem. So it shouldn't have been ignored. It shouldn't have been. Does that make any sense at all? I sort of go with you, Stig, in the sense I'm not sure it's what you're saying, but it seems to me to, um, from a physical health perspective, um, maybe keep exploring. I don't know, but it doesn't. I understand where the dentist is coming from, but I don't know. Anyway,
What do we do when we can't find an answer or we don't get the answer that we were looking for, right? Do we keep going from doctor to doctor until finally someone tells us what we want to hear? Is that really what's best for us? Yeah. It's kind of like relationships, right? Like, oh, this one didn't work out. The next one, oh, the next one, or the next one, and the next one. And then you just end up realizing that, people are just people. Like, you're never gonna find the perfect person that you're looking for, you know? Like, you're never gonna find that. So at some point you do kind of have to settle in the sense that you realize that no matter who you date, who you're with, they're gonna piss you off. Like, it doesn't matter, And they're gonna be annoying and they're gonna do things that you don't like. And if you're thinking that I'm gonna find a partner who's never gonna get me upset or lie to me or whatever, that person does not exist, you know? And when those people do exist, there are arahants and Buddhas that they don't want to date you. So, there's no solution for that. So you kind of have to come to terms with it. Like, yeah, your job is not going to be the way you want it to be. Your partner's not going to be the way you want it to be. This body is not going to be the way you want it to be. Do we do our best to try to kind of filter, right? So we're not in a toxic work environment, in a toxic relationship, that we're not, hurting our physical body. Yes, all the time, for sure, we need to do that. But that's not always possible, and even if you do your best, you'll still have to encounter disappointment and pain. What do you do then? What do you do when your normal pattern, your normal tool of always wanting to solve the problem doesn't work anymore? Right? That's here really, I think, where the Dhamma gives its fruit. Right? What do you do when you're stuck between a rock and a hard place? You have nowhere to go. Do you try to force it? Or do you see, okay, this is a reality of life, that not all problems have solutions, and that sometimes I just can't get my way. And we can justify getting our way, so many reasons. We can come up with all these reasons to justify us getting our way. But sometimes the best solution is nothing, just learning to be with it. Yes, I think I saw some hands go up or some questions before we finish.
Yeah.
I'm willing to go a minute or two over. Let's go
Okay.
with Deborah. I think Deborah hasn't had an opportunity to speak yet.
Bhante, that's it's
Yes.
been a very wholesome morning. Thank you for that. And I just wanted to comment on how so much of our community engagement this morning has been on that topic of wholesomeness. And I've said this a number of times in our Sangha, but to me, so much of my journey on the path has been related to the serenity prayer in Christianity, in how I was raised, about finding the ability to do what you can to solve a problem and let go of what you can't do to solve a problem, and then the wisdom to know the difference. And to me, the path helps with that wisdom.
That's reminds me of, what the Buddha said in regards to reality, that all things are subject to change. All things arise due to causes and conditions. If one of those conditions is not present, then these things fall apart. All things are subject to decay, destruction, death. That is the truth. That is the one truth, that everything will fall apart. This cosmos itself at some point will fall apart. What hope is there in the world? In the material world, in the sensual world, in the fabricated world? There is none. There is none. So we have to go another way, or go against the way, against the stream. That is the Dhamma, the teachings of the Buddha. To find freedom from samsara, to find freedom from this system, this reality that's just falling apart and of the nature to fall apart. How about the Bodhisattva said, how about I find a happiness that's independent, right, of these fabrications, of these things that fall apart? I shouldn't invest in things that fall apart. I shouldn't invest in things that don't fall apart. What is it that doesn't fall apart? That's for you to find out. That's for you to explore. That's for you to sit with. It doesn't have a name. It doesn't have a taste. It doesn't have a color. It's not in a place. It's not in the past or in the future. I can't describe it, but it's there. So that's your homework for this weekend. To find that out, the tasteless, the touchless, the unconceivable, the spaceless, the timeless. Okay, everyone. So thank you for joining. I don't know if there's any announcements or anything else that you do. So if there's anyone else who needs to speak, you can do that. If not, that's it for today. Okay, everyone. Bye-bye. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.